All right, for the Germ Fighter game, I know a lot of you are struggling with it, so I'm going to make a start to finish video for it. I'm going to go kind of fast, so make sure that you're pausing as you need. I imported the file from PLTW. It's pretty blank here. You've got arrangements with score labels, timer labels, start buttons, reset buttons, and a sound box over here. Those are going to be the basic components that you start with. When we look at the blocks, there's nothing, so we're going to start that from scratch. So the first thing we need to do on our designer view is add a couple things. We need a place that we can play the game. So we need to add a canvas for that. Canvas is under drawing and animation. We're going to throw it down here under the bottom of the screen. The canvas we're going to set to like an 80% height, 98% wide, and we can see it takes up the whole screen on here. Then, underneath the canvas, we're going to add an image sprite onto the canvas. That image sprite we're going to rename to be white blood cell. And we're going to add a second image sprite. I'm going to go kind of near the top. We're going to rename that one to germ cell. My white blood cell, I'm going to add a picture. We already have this stuff in here. So white blood cell is going to be the white blood cell PNG. The germ cell is going to be the germ PNG. And then I can see they appear on my screen. Now, if I put this on my tablet right now, it's not going to be the right size. So I'm going to take my white blood cell and I'm going to move the Y to 700 on that one. That puts them all the way at the bottom of my tablet. It moves him off of my designer view. I don't care. It's fine. Then I need to go to media and I need to add a sound. So remember, sound is an invisible component. It shows up down here at the bottom. I also need to add a clock. A clock is under sensors. So now I've got a clock over here. I'm also going to go back to media and I'm going to add nothing. Nope, I'm going to stay with that. For my canvas, though, I'm going to go to my background color and I'm going to change that to red. So now my screen should look like the ones that we've been testing in class. I forgot to change this to tablet size, so I'm going to change that real quick. Shouldn't matter for me because I did use XY coordinates and percentages for my canvas size. And on my white blood cell, I already put that to 700. So check it on your tablet, make sure that looks right. Then we're going to come over to code. So under blocks, first thing we're going to do is we're going to initialize some variables. And because we need a score and a timer on this, we need two. So I'm going to do initialize global score. And I want my score to start at 0, which is a math block. Then I need a variable for my timer. I'm going to call that one timer, and I want my timer to start at 10. You can change that later if you want to, but don't ever put anything higher than a 10 if you're just trying to test your game. Then what we need to do is decide what we want to happen when we click our start button. So when start button click. So on my start button, I need a few things to happen. I need my germ sprite, so my germ cell. I need to tell that where to go. So I am looking for a germ sprite heading, set germs heading. And I don't want it to always go the same place because that makes the game kind of silly. So I'm going to use a random integer, which is in the math blocks. And here it is, random integer. It defaults to 1 to 100. We're actually going to change that to be 30 to 50. So that's telling the germ cell that when I hit the start button, I want it to start bouncing in a random way. I also need to go and tell my germ sprite how fast I want it to be. So I'm going to find my germ cell speed, which is here. So set germ cell speed. I am awful at this game, so I don't want it to go too fast. I'm going to set mine at 5. It's a pretty slow germ. You can speed that up later if you want to. And then I also need to tell it an interval. The germ sprite interval is how often we want it to set that speed. So I'm going down, I'm going to find my germ cell interval, and I'm going to set my interval to 10. So this is everything I want my start button to do. Okay, we also have a reset button on our screen. So next thing I'm going to do is my reset button. So here's my reset button. When I click that reset button that's on my front screen, I need my germ sprite to go back to the original location. Because remember, he's bouncing around the screen when I hit start. So I'm going to go to my germ cell, and I'm looking for purple code that says call germ cell move to. And I need to tell it where I want it to be. So for me, my X, I want it to be at the dead center at the top of the screen. Now for that, we're going to need a math block with division in it. So I'm going to math, I'm finding my divide block, and I'm going to say that I want it to be half the width of my canvas. So I'm going to go down to canvas, find light green for width, and I want it to be half of that, so I'm going to throw a number 2 in there. So that means it will be halfway across my screen from left to right. For my Y value, I want it to be at the top of the screen, and the top of the screen for a tablet view on portrait mode is 30. So this block here will say, okay, germ cell, go up to the top of my screen in the middle. I also want my germ to stop moving when I restart the game. So I'm going to set my germ sprite heading. So back to my germ cell, going back down to my heading. And I'm going to set that to a 0. Because remember, on this one, we don't want it to go anywhere. So germ sprite heading to 0. I also want my reset button to set my canvas back to my normal background screen, because when we lose the game, we're eventually going to tell it to change screens. So I'm going to go to set canvas 1 background image. So canvas 1 background image comes in with a collision.wave. We don't want that. We're going to throw it out. And we're just going to put an empty text box there, because that says, hey, set my background image back to whatever I set my designer view to start. I also need to tell it to put my score back to 0. And I need to tell it to put my timer or my score label. So here's my score label. Set score label text to be score of 0. I'm going to do a set my timer back to 10. And I'm going to set my timer label to say timer 10. I'm going to tell my clock not to be on right now, because I don't want my clock to start running as soon as I hit go. So set timer enabled to false. And I'm going to tell my germ to stop moving. So I'm going to set my germ sprite speed to also be a 0. I don't want the germ to move. I don't want him to try to move. I don't want my background to be changed. I want my screen to pretty much look just like it did at the beginning. So that's my reset button. I am done with both of these buttons, so I'm going to double click them to collapse them and get them out of the way. All right, next thing we need to do is actually tell our germ to move. Actually, let's drag our white blood cell first. So we're going to go down to our white blood cell, and we're going to say that when I drag my white blood cell, so when I'm moving him back and forth with my finger, I'm going to call that white blood cell to move to, and I want that to be my current X location because I don't want to be able to move up and down the screen. And I do want it to move my Y, so I can drag it with my finger. So I'm going to do my white blood cell Y. So what this says is that when I drag that white blood cell with my finger, it's going to move the white blood cell to the current X location, which locks it at the bottom of the screen, and whatever Y it happens to be at. All right, so now let's go to the germ cell.